France is collapsing, and the reason is because Haitians are done bewitching that country.
Foremost, I should let you guys know that it was announced just 3 hours ago that the French government has collapsed.
France is now ungovernable. You better believe it. France is now ungovernable. The country that actually made its money from bleeding black people. The country that forced Haiti to pay 150 billion for their freedom. And one of the reasons why Haiti is still in the situation it is right now is because of France. France, the country that bled Africa, making sure that the countries that it colonized basically had to pay a colonial tax for being colonized. That country, you know, the country that one of the biggest slave traders in the world, that country has run out of money. They cannot afford to pay the pensions. They cannot afford the healthcare system. Literally, France is literally on the verge of economic collapse. And this is serious. France is in worse trouble than Greece was, except at the time the European Union was so powerful at the time. But now the European Union was weakened by Brexit. The European Union has been weakened by Trump turning against them. So now the European Union, they're just running around like headless chickens. They cannot even bail France out. France is literally on the verge of collapse. And coming close after France is going to be the UK and Germany.
You want to talk about black empowerment? Yeah. The Haitian Revolution? Yeah. The ancestors of Haiti? They woke up and revived the energy in African presidents in the Sahel region in West Africa, and they got the guts to kick away Macron. Macron has nothing to feed his people. And I tell you this for free, if you see Candace Owens, yes, we know she got beef with Macron, but if you see she's talking about how broke France is, I tell you, Macron has nothing to feed his people. White people are so used to getting everything on a silver platter. Yes, I'm sorry, white people, this is gonna offend you, but what I'm trying to say is that man was so used to stealing from Africans. Yeah, he destabilized the Haitians. And now he crying here, bro, because African presidents say, we ain't gonna let you take our resources no more. It's been a year now, and they are crying. France is collapsing. And I know where the comment is coming from, ladies and gentlemen. Haitians, the Haitian ancestors have cried and they have wept and they bewitched France together with the African ancestors. No, because tell me why. The French government is crying right now and they are asking for help. Now, let me show you a few clips before we go into some details on how they got here.
France did not see what is happening in West Africa coming. So they find themselves at a time when they are very weak economically, when at home the population of immigrants is growing bigger and bigger. You go to cities such as Marseille, you find Algerians, you find Moroccans, you find Senegalese, you find Guineans, you find Burkinabe, and things are not happening as they used to be then.
Hey France, what happened with you? Bro, our government is a mess and our prime minister got kicked out.
Africa is the only reason why Western Europeans get to enjoy such a high quality of life, especially for France. They brag about being able to live well even though they don't have to work as hard as Americans, but they omit the fact that all that comfort they enjoy comes off of the back of African resources and labor. England, Portugal, Germany, Belgium, Italy, and France all made a massive scramble for Africa in the 1880s, and France by far still has their foot in their old colonial ways. And even though these African nations have declared their independence, France and a couple other countries are still exploiting them, and they have given nothing in return to these African nations. They have built very little in infrastructure and construction. They have given next to nothing compared to how much they have taken to support their ways. Out of the 8 African coups that have happened since 2020, 7 of them were from French colonies. The French do not know how to build, they do not know how to innovate, they do not know how to grow democracy in any part of the world, which is why for the past 60, 70 years, they have just had French puppets that were ruling these African countries that finally got sick of how they were being treated. China has only taken an interest in Africa for 30 or 40 years, yet they have built more industry and infrastructure than all of the other European countries combined. So of course, the African nations are going to have a much more favorable disposition towards China since they are the ones who are actually building factories, roads, bridges, hospitals. China is actually divesting a lot of their own resources to make this possible. You guys know how I feel about a lot of Chinese policy, but they did hit the nail on the mark when it comes to Africa. It is pretty clear that Russia's Wagner forces have had a lot to do with the coups that have taken place in Gabon, Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso. And even though the Russians aren't trying to actually help anyone, I believe they are trying to foment chaos and destabilize a lot of positions in the West. This can be an overall good thing for Central Africa. Even though the Russians' goal is to create a lot of instability for the West, this instability can spread to a lot of other African countries, and that can actually hurt a lot of China's positions there. Make no mistake, despite what you're seeing in the media, the US will find a way to exploit whatever is happening in Africa. At first, they seemed that they were very pro taking down the Niger coup, and now they've kind of backed off and they said that they are going to respect the current government. No, a lot of these African nations don't have a favorable viewing of the United States. The US will always find a way to profit off of whatever instability is caused. If there is going to be a disruption in the energy supply, I will bet you that the US will make money selling its liquid natural gas and oil. If there is going to be widespread war, the US is going to make a lot of money selling its weapons. I would not put it past the United States interests to have their cake and eat it too. They may be happy about China building all of this infrastructure because that means the US doesn't have to. It means the US doesn't have to invest in anything to make Africa more prosperous and rich, but they can reap all of the benefits for when that actually happens. In my opinion, I think that every Western interest should be kicked out of every African country and then reintroduced as a potential trading partner among peers with equal standing, instead of these African nations having to deal with the West like guaranteed exploiters.
So the French government has fallen again, but international news media is going to be very shy about telling us the real reason why it's fallen, the economic reasons why it's fallen. On his way out, the ousted Prime Minister, Mr. Francois, said, "You might kick me out, you might remove me, but that does not change the economic problems for the country." I'm paraphrasing. The real reason why France has failed as a government is because Africa has taken its power back. Ever since the country of Niger in the Sahel, in Central West Africa, decided to nationalize its uranium, France has never been the same again. This uranium that state-owned companies like Orano, French-owned companies like Orano had been siphoning, stealing under the previous government, today, Niger turned off the faucet. Niger said no more. So Niger, under the new governance of President Tiani, is nationalizing its uranium. This uranium France was stealing not only to light its beautiful cities like Paris and Nice, it was also using it to run its electrical manufacturing and industries. All of these are processing and running their nuclear reactors on top of it all. So these things that are the foundations of an economy, like manufacturing and processing, right now that the electricity in France, their energy is not safe. They do not have a reliable place to get their energy from. This is why they're suffering. But it's not going to be told that way on international news media. You're only going to hear it from people like me and others who are truth tellers. So yeah, this is why. This is what happens. This is proof that African leaders are in service of either them or us.
So now that Africa, 14 countries in Africa has cut France totally off. They told France that they will not be sending them no 85% of their income. They will not be doing it. They've been doing that shit since 1959 and they will no longer be doing it. France thought that Africa was playing. And no, they weren't. Because now France, their economy is tanking big time. They are in such a deficit. Their country is just falling. It's burning right now. It hasn't even been 3 months, and they can't pay their bills. Those 14 countries in Africa is putting France fucking out of business. And that's only 14 countries. You know, Africa has 52 or 53. What is France going to do? And Africa don't even want to make no deals. They don't even want to work with them. They don't want to do shit. They're done. They're finished. It's over with. We don't want to talk to y'all no more. them 14 countries are trying to get the other countries to just start pulling back too. So France is falling. France is falling, y'all.
Hi guys, welcome back again to my channel. My name is Olivia. In case you're just seeing my face for the first time, thank you so much for stopping by. So do you know family why France is big in Africa? You know, the truth is for years France and a lot of European countries built their wealth of Africa's resources. You know, gold, oil, cocoa, just name it. Okay, they joined the continent, I swear, and then acted like they were the saviors. Colonization wasn't about helping Africa, okay? It was about using Africa. And even when after independence, France kept control, the military bases, shady economic deals, even dictating currency for us. They treated African nations like nobodies. But look at what is happening right now, guys. Africa is standing up. Countries are kicking, out French troops, demanding their resources back, and then choosing their own allies. And suddenly, France is the one scrambling, right? The one complaining about ingratitude, right? That's not strength. That's begging. That's them being desperate, okay? The colonizer who once controlled everything is now the one trying not to be left behind. Let me know what you guys think about this video, okay? Should Africa cut ties with France completely or still keep some kind of relationship with them? Just drop your thoughts in the comment section. I would love to read it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and support the channel by subscribing to the channel. So let's keep watching family to see and hear what people have to say about this whole thing.
Bro, what the hell is going on in France right now? The reports are saying that over the past few nights, in prisons across the country, they were hit by what officials are calling coordinated attacks. And we're talking like automatic weapons being fired at these prisons. They've got pictures of bullet holes in walls and glass doors. They're blowing up cars and even threatening prison officers at their home. And this is not just like one or two. These are prisons throughout the country in several different cities. The attackers apparently left behind the tag DDPF, and so now that's got France's anti-terror office in on the investigation. Now, the wildest part about this is that authorities believe that these are intimidation attempts, these attacks, and apparently they're in response to a recent government crackdown on what officials are calling a tsunami of cocaine entering France right now. But gangs, well, what we believe to be gangs, retaliating like this, that's like some cartel level stuff. Absolutely wild. Like, I'll keep you guys updated.
Réveille-toi, le pouvoir est à toi. Français, réveille-toi, le pouvoir est à toi.
So France is broke because African countries have kicked them out and they don't allow them to exploit them anymore. And as you saw, there's a big rally in the country. They're protesting the president, Macron. They want him out. Yesterday, they voted out the prime minister, which was the third prime minister in 14 months. He got a vote of no confidence, the same last three, because the last three prime ministers cannot present a bill or cannot present a plan on how to revitalize the French economy. Now, the only way to present a plan to revitalize the French economy is by re-enslaving or re-exploiting African countries. And Russia is helping African countries. Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, they're building nuclear plants. Like, it's helping African countries. That's Russia's plan of fucking up the West. So the West is using a proxy war to destroy Russia. Russia is deciding, okay, I'm going to take away your means of living. So Russia has been saving African countries from France. And they have a planned demonstration tomorrow, the 10th. Wednesday, the whole nation is going to have this massive demonstration tomorrow in protest of Macron. But yeah, France is broke. And everything they're doing right now, a lot of the French understand it, but majority of the masses don't. Everything they're doing right now, nothing can be done. The only way France goes back to where it used to be is to find new countries to exploit for resources. That's it. France has nothing. They have nothing. England is next. Oh, I also forgot to add, this is why France has been pushing for a war with Russia. France has gotten 26 countries right now to agree to invade, to go into Ukraine, which is going to be a violation, which will force a war with Russia. The reason France wants this is if it does that, then Russia is now faced with more problems, more wars. Then it takes away some of its resources from Africa. It creates new chaos, and then France uses that as an opportunity to go back into Africa and then find new countries to exploit. The only way France can survive is exploitation. So they need war right now to make that exploitation happen.
Paris is burning tonight. The so-called Block Everything movement has spilled into the streets, and they mean it literally. Bins are on fire, buildings are torched, police are battling rioters, and traffic across the capital is paralysed. This isn't polite protest. This is France doing what France does best when it's had enough: shutting the country down and lighting a match. And what sparked this chaos? Macron's government again. Another prime minister shuffled in, austerity cuts biting into schools, hospitals and public services, and a population that feels ignored and ripped off. People aren't just angry anymore, they're done, and tonight they're showing it. Roads blocked, train stations targeted, police flooding Paris in their thousands, but still the fires spread. This is what happens when the elite keep rearranging the deck chairs while the ship sinks. Ordinary people flip the table. France has always had a flair for revolution, but what's happening right now is a warning shot. This isn't a protest, it's a wake-up call. And looking at Paris tonight, the only safe bet is that it's going to get worse, much worse, before it gets better. Vive la France!
Well, I usually don't like covering politics, but the fall of France is so bizarre. Okay, it's like it's falling in slow motion. Like, it is falling. 14 African countries have kicked it out, and the revolution, of course, started with Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali. And now the government, I think last night, has collapsed again. The second time in a year. This is the second time it has collapsed in a year, meaning they can't agree on stuff, basically. So they're busy kicking people out and firing people, and there's no ministers and all that stuff. When I this, it's slow motion. Why is that slow motion? Kore the minute Congo ere no more. Utlo thunya mushi.
Yeah, I feel like France is not doing too hot lately. France is not doing good lately, man. So ever since Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger joined their own alliance, France has been taking hit all over the place. 70% of the uranium that powers France's electricity in Paris is coming from Mali. And Mali is no longer sending that uranium to France. So no, France got to hold source and get it somewhere. So France is taking a hit. And then Burkina Faso is getting rid of the troops and everything. So France is, they're taking a hit. They're taking a hit. Burkina Faso took over all the gold, mine, and everything, making all that money that France used to just take. Change the currency from CFA franc, which is pretty much France money. You feel me? That's France money. So France has been taking hit. France has been taking hit. And here comes the allegation with the First Lady, Brigitte Macron. No, they're saying she's not even a woman. They're saying she might be a man. That's a big lie. That's a big lie. So Candace Owens just found out that she might be a man.
Imagine you're driving a particularly big car. Marvels, that's called a truck. No, hang on. Just hang on to the analogy, right? It's a car so big that you want two drivers, like a Jaeger from Pacific Rim, you know, where they sink their brains and they start. Anyway, it was a great film. President to manage the foreign policy, be the authority and the head of state, and prime minister to manage the economy, the domestic stuff, you know, bakery sales, baguette sales, croissant sales, right, production, domestic stuff, the boring stuff, right? Think of a person manning the tills at a shop and the person managing the stock in the back. That's actually a much better and more normal example, analogy. So sorry, I started with a weird one. Anyway, this is how France works. Fun fact, now you've learned something in 45 seconds. France has a prime minister, domestic stuff, and a president, head of state and foreign policy stuff. You know about the more important, arguably, guy, the foreign policy head of state guy, Emmanuel Macron. You don't know about the prime minister. Now, this is how France works, basically. But this week, things got a bit unstable, you could say, like my phone when I'm recording a lot of the time. France just witnessed another government collapse, you see. And it's absolutely wild. Prime Minister François Bayrou was just voted out by an overwhelming vote, over 300 votes to, I think, 194, in the French National Assembly. Think of that as like the Houses of Parliament or the Congress, but in France. Making him the second prime minister to fall, or be booted out. Really, you didn't fall off a chair; you got kicked off in less than a year. In less than a year, 2 prime ministers, 5 in the last couple of years. Oof, but you don't know how unstable France was domestically. And as I said, the prime minister deals with the domestic stuff, the boring stuff, the economy, right? Whereas Macron gets to schmooze with other heads of state and direct the boomsticks and the flying ouchie makers. Not sure why I called them that. Anyway, some analysts have pointed out that the French economy is not in a healthy state. Bayrou, the prime minister, before he was kicked out, tried to propose massive budget cuts worth $44 billion to save France from drowning in debt. And this is, a battle they can't just wave the white flag for. They actually have to fight debt head on. No disrespect to the French. We're talking about a country with a debt of, I'm getting a bit economist here because I really find economics interesting, just like geopolitics. It's actually a facet of geopolitics. But bear with me, this is not an economics channel, but I'll simplify and keep it casual. France has a debt of 114% to GDP ratio, right? That's, just to put that into perspective, imagine the GDP is the total output of the whole French Republic, right? Imagine for a whole year, the French were told, all businesses, all individuals, any money makers, right? Anyone making that sweet, sweet franc, or euro now, I suppose. Anyone making the dollars, the euros, sorry, in the French Republic, pay off France's debt. And with all the money cleaned out, no savings, no spending on anything else, in a year, you'd still not be able to pay off the whole debt of the French Republic. It's 114%, right? So you'd have 14% left over. That's a fat chunk of debt. Now, the government spending is going to be put through its paces, right? The government has an amount of money it had to spend on military and healthcare and schools and police and infrastructure and and paying off debt. Now, forget dropping the debt that France owes. They're struggling just to pay the interest payments, right? If you've got $100 you owe, let's say the interest you pay on that yearly is like 5%, let's say. France is struggling to pay that $5 interest a year, let alone pay down the actual debt. It's a mess, okay? So budgets need to be guillotined, like Chandler Bing, right? So the government was literally trying to scrap things like public holidays in France to save money. And surprise, surprise, National Assembly members representing the French people were like, public holidays? Oh, monsieur, are you having a laugh? No. God. Anyway, here's where it gets really crazy. Both the left and the right, both the left in France and the right wing in France completely rejected the cuts. They said, no, let's not fix the economic crisis. We need to fix it, yes, but not like this. We're going to boot you out. And they booted out the prime minister, voted him out. Now France is stuck in an impossible loop because Macron is the president. President Macron appoints a prime minister. So he's appointed a new prime minister. And France, as a republic, is stuck in this loop where desperately needed cuts to spending to avoid economic disaster can't really be pushed through because it's ugly and no one wants it. Every time a prime minister tries to do it, is booted out. This is Macron's 5th prime minister in less than 2 years. Oof. The country is facing what economists call a debt crisis, with borrowing costs skyrocketing, obviously, because you're struggling to pay your debt. Who's going to lend you more money? Well, some people will still lend you more money, but they'll say, okay, we take more risk with our money, so the interest is going to be higher, which makes this, it's a death spiral, right? It's going to make it even harder for France. And investors are losing confidence in the country. So many are saying France's economy or France's economic trajectory is now completely unpredictable and it's definitely not reliable, stable, or promising. And that's terrifying for the third largest economy in Europe, second largest in the EU, but I say third largest if you include the UK, which is really part of Europe. It's just not part of the EU. Hashtag Brexit, hashtag Farage for days, Farage for life. No, kidding. Remember, we still, as a French Republic, though, have money for weapons to Ukraine. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. That's not a dig, by the way. That's not a joke or an insult. Geostrategically, you see, and we'll end on this. Geostrategically, France is a former great power, right? This is Napoleon's country. Napoleon Bonaparte, short as he was, he did rule all of Europe once and then got slapped back to Paris so hard it wasn't even funny by the Russians. But France once, had an empire to almost not have the sun set on it, just like Britain. France had a huge empire. That's why so much of the world still speaks flipping French. But they may have to now come to terms with the fact that they are not in that great power position anymore. So rivaling Russia, supporting Ukraine, when your National Assembly is yanking the chair out from underneath prime ministers 2 to 3 times a year on the regular, you might have to recalculate your priorities, French people, and just let some things go, because you have no choice. Geostrategically speaking, it's that or that. You can't have both. For the unbiased news and analysis without the Western spin, I'm Mahfouz. I've got a headache, but there's a lot more news to cover, so I will see you shortly on the next one.
The collapse of France is now unfolding on a large scale, with events escalating quickly. After the French Prime Minister lost a vote of no confidence, massive protests erupted across the country on September 10th. Demonstrations have spread all over France, and the government appears to be crumbling under the weight of political instability. This situation is drawing comparisons to Nepal, where governments often face turmoil when they fail to meet public expectations. Before being ousted, the Prime Minister himself warned that removing him would not solve the deeper issues France faces. He suggested that the nation's struggles go beyond leadership and are tied to the way resources have been managed. Reports now reveal that France relied heavily on African resources, particularly from the Sahel states, instead of building sustainable development from within. Uranium from Niger played a crucial role in powering Paris, keeping the city's lights on while draining Africa's natural wealth. With France now expelled from much of Africa, the consequences are becoming dire. Reports claim Paris has only a few days before electricity shortages hit, as the steady flow of uranium has been cut off. Without this lifeline, the nation faces the risk of widespread blackouts and further economic collapse. The once strong French state now appears vulnerable, and many believe this is just the beginning of a much larger breakdown.
France just realized how much they need Africa. Ever since they were kicked out of West Africa, they have been on a slow decline. Debt, and now businesses are closing. Nuclear plants are closing because of this. Right now, nuclear plants are closing because they don't have any uranium, and Niger has said, we are not going to give you any. France has sent people to beg the leaders of Niger, please let us come back. Let us mine a little bit of your uranium, and then we will help you with security. But Niger is saying, no, we don't need your help. In fact, they have decided to side with Russia and China. So now France is desperate, I'm telling you. These guys will do anything. Some people are saying that France is actually the one who is paying those terrorist groups to destroy West Africa, to destabilize those countries, just so France can be needed, so they can come and offer their help. But their help is by taking their gold, their uranium, and all their resources. So now West Africa seems to know this. That's why they're asking for help from China and Russia, not from France, not from America, because they have learned better. But with all these things happening, it makes me wonder, what if France came back in West Africa? Do you think they would help anyway, or do you think they would just continue destroying and looting those countries until those countries are empty without any resources?